Jake Murphy was having what he generously called a career crisis, and what his ex-wife less generously called a midlife meltdown with commitment issues. At 35, he'd been teaching wilderness survival to overprivileged corporate executives for 8 years, watching them fail spectacularly at making fire while complaining about the Wi-Fi reception in the Rocky Mountains. He was in the middle of explaining to his latest group why eating random berries was a bad idea when the air in front of him started shimmering like a heat mirage, having an identity crisis. A holographic blue alien materialized, looking like a cross between an insurance salesman and a disappointed parent. Jake Murphy, wilderness survival instructor, resident of Colorado, Earth, the alien asked, consulting what appeared to be a cosmic clipboard. Yeah, that's me," Jake said, while his students pulled out their phones to record what they assumed was some kind of elaborate corporate team-building exercise gone wrong. "Congratulations. You've been selected by the Galactic Education Exchange to provide basic survival training to the Fluffington species on planet Whiskers 7. Your transport departs immediately." Jake blinked. "I'm sorry, what now? I didn't apply for anything galactic. I can barely handle terrestrial idiots, let alone space idiots. The selection process is automatic based on your survival expertise and your species' natural paranoia levels. Humans rank surprisingly high in both categories. Look, blue guy, I don't know what kind of prank this is, but I'm in the middle of teaching these people how not to die in the woods. Maybe try the guy who runs the outdoor adventure company down in Boulder. He's way more enthusiastic about this stuff." The alien's expression shifted to what Jake was pretty sure was cosmic impatience. "The assignment is mandatory. Failure to comply results in a formal complaint filed with your planetary government. My planetary government doesn't even know you exist. They do now. Also, you're being paid in universal credits, which convert to approximately 50,000 Earth dollars per week." Jake's students gasped. Even Jake had to admit that was decent money for telling people not to eat poisonous things. "And if I refuse, then the Fluffingtons will likely face extinction within the next galactic cycle, which would be unfortunate since they're the universe's primary source of optimism and really excellent baked goods." Before Jake could point out that he'd never agreed to be responsible for an entire species' survival, the alien pressed a button on his cosmic clipboard. Jake felt a tingling sensation like being struck by lightning while drinking carbonated water. "Wait. I didn't say yes. I have a business to run. I have clients who need to learn basic outdoor competence." But Jake was already dissolving into sparkles, leaving behind a very confused group of corporate executives and one extremely detailed lesson plan about berry identification that none of them would ever use. The last thing Jake heard before the universe swallowed him whole was his assistant yelling, "Should I cancel your afternoon appointments?" Jake managed to shout back, "Cancel everything, and feed my cat," before disappearing entirely, wondering if his life insurance covered interdimensional kidnapping. Jake materialized on what looked like the cover of a travel brochure for Tropical Paradise Monthly, if that magazine existed, and was written by someone who'd never actually visited a tropical paradise. The sky was a gentle lavender color. The grass was literally emerald green, and the air smelled like vanilla and cinnamon had a baby with fresh mountain air. "This is gorgeous," Jake muttered, immediately suspicious. "What's the catch?" The catch introduced itself by bounding up to him on 4 legs, looking like someone had crossed a house cat with a golden retriever and then dipped the result in rainbow sprinkles. It was about 3 feet tall, covered in soft purple fur, and had the largest, most trusting eyes Jake had ever seen. "Oh my stars, you must be the human survival expert. I'm Commander Purrington, leader of the Fluffington Defense Force." The creature's voice was like listening to a kindergarten teacher who'd had too much caffeine. "We're so incredibly honored to have you here. This is the most exciting thing that's happened since we discovered that flowers make excellent hats." Jake looked around. The Defense Force appeared to consist of about 30 more rainbow-colored cat creatures, all bouncing excitedly and wearing what he could only describe as the galaxy's most adorable military uniforms. They looked like they'd been designed by someone who thought war was a particularly energetic type of group hug. "Okay, so you're the ones who need survival training," Jake said slowly. "What exactly are you trying to survive? Because this place looks like it was designed by Disney on a particularly optimistic day." Commander Purrington's ears drooped slightly. "Well, you see, our planet has been protected by an ancient force field for the past 1,000 years. It keeps out all the dangerous things." "What kind of dangerous things?" "Oh, you know, carnivorous plants, predatory disco squirrels, weather that isn't perfectly pleasant, beings who don't say please and thank you. The usual galactic unpleasantness." Jake stared at him. "Disco squirrels. They're actually quite lovely dancers, but they have this unfortunate habit of eating anything that moves. Very rude, really, but the force field is failing, and our planetary engineers estimate we have about 2 weeks before it shuts down completely. And you've never learned basic survival skills. Because, well, we've never needed them. Everything here is perfectly safe and lovely. The most dangerous thing we've ever encountered was a particularly stubborn door that wouldn't open until we said please 3 times instead of just once. Jake rubbed his temples. So you're telling me that an entire species has survived for thousands of years without ever learning how to deal with actual danger? We prefer to think of it as maintaining a positive outlook, said another Fluffington. This one bright pink with yellow polka dots. I'm Dr. Mittens, by the way. I'm the planetary anxiologist. I study worry so that others don't have to experience it themselves. You have a professional worrier. Oh yes, I'm very good at it. I worry about everything so the rest of the population can focus on making friendship bracelets and composing thank you notes to the universe. Jake looked around at the assembled crowd of creatures who appeared to be physically incapable of pessimism. They were all smiling at him with the kind of trust usually reserved for golden retrievers meeting their favorite human. Right, Jake said, realizing he was about to attempt the impossible. So I need to teach an entire species of cosmic optimists how to survive in a universe that's apparently trying to kill them. Exactly. Commander Purrington beamed. We're so excited to learn. We've prepared welcome cookies and a song. A song. About survival. And friendship. And how wonderful it is to not die. Jake closed his eyes and counted to 10. When he opened them, the Fluffingtons were still there. Still smiling. Still looking at him like he was their personal messiah of not dying. Okay, he said finally. Let's start with lesson 1. The universe is not your friend. Jake had taught survival skills to hedge fund managers, reality TV stars, and once memorably to a group of yoga instructors who insisted on thanking the wilderness for sharing its energy. None of that had prepared him for the Fluffingtons. All right, everyone gather around, Jake said, trying to channel his inner drill sergeant. First rule of survival, assume everything is trying to kill you until proven otherwise. 30 pairs of enormous trusting eyes stared at him. Commander Purrington raised a paw. But what if something is just having a bad day and needs a hug? Then you die, Jake said flatly, with kindness in your heart and teeth marks in your throat. The Fluffingtons exchanged concerned glances. Dr. Mittens scribbled frantically on a notepad. Should I be worried that everything wants to kill us? Yes, that's the point. That's literally why I'm here. Oh good, Dr. Mittens said, relaxing visibly. I was worried I wasn't worried enough. Jake decided to start with something simple. Let's talk about food identification. Can anyone tell me what you normally eat? A bright green Fluffington with orange stripes bounced forward. I'm Whiskers McGillicuddy. We eat friendship berries and happiness moss, and occasionally some nice rocks that have been sitting in the sun. Rocks. They're very polite rocks. They don't complain when you eat them. Jake stared at him. You eat rocks. Only the consensual ones. How do you know if a rock consents? You ask it nicely. If it doesn't say no, it's probably okay with being eaten. Jake turned to Commander Purrington. Please tell me you have some kind of normal food. Well, we grow vegetables in our gardens. Very friendly vegetables that enjoy being harvested. They practically jump into the cooking pot. Show me these vegetables. The Fluffingtons led him to their communal garden, which looked like it had been designed by someone who thought vegetables should be as cute as possible. There were carrots with tiny faces, tomatoes that actually glowed with happiness, and what appeared to be lettuce that waved at them as they approached. These are adorable, Jake said, but when the force field goes down you might need to eat things that aren't quite so cooperative. Like this. He pointed to a cluster of dark berries growing on a nearby bush. They were beautiful deep purple and glowing faintly with an ominous inner light. Those are midnight berries, Whiskers McGillicuddy said excitedly. They're so pretty. I bet they taste like friendship. They taste like death, Jake said, pulling out his universal scanner. These things are more poisonous than a politician's promise. One bite and you'll be seeing colors that don't exist while your organs shut down in alphabetical order. But they're so shiny, said a small blue Fluffington. Surely something that beautiful couldn't be harmful. That's exactly how they get you. Rule number 2. If something in nature looks too good to be true, it's probably trying to kill you in a very creative way. Jake decided to demonstrate proper fire-making techniques. Fire is your friend, he said, striking his universal fire starter. It keeps you warm, cooks your food, and scares away predators. The Fluffingtons gasped in wonder as flames sprang to life. It's like a tiny sun, Commander Purrington exclaimed. Can we pet it? No, do not pet the fire. Fire is not for petting. But it was too late. 3 Fluffingtons had already approached the flames with their paws outstretched. Jake quickly extinguished the fire before they could singe their fur. Lesson number 3. Fire is a tool, not a pet. It will burn you, and it won't feel bad about it afterward. But it looked so friendly. Dr. Mittens said sadly. I was going to offer it some of my worry. I have plenty to share. Jake tried again. Okay, let's talk about shelter. When you're in danger you need somewhere to hide. Like a blanket fort, Whiskers McGillicuddy asked hopefully. More like a strategic defensive position that won't collapse if someone sneezes on it. Jake showed them how to build a proper lean-to using branches and leaves. The Fluffingtons watched with fascination, then immediately began improving his design by adding flower decorations, welcome mats and what appeared to be a small guest room. This is not a bed and breakfast, Jake said watching them install tiny curtains. This is survival shelter. It's supposed to keep you alive, not win architectural awards. But if we're going to live in it, shouldn't it be nice? Asked a purple Fluffington with yellow spots. What if someone comes to visit? If someone comes to visit while you're hiding in survival shelter, they're probably trying to eat you. Well then we should definitely have snacks ready. It's only polite. Jake was beginning to understand why the universe had sent him specifically to help these creatures. They were so aggressively friendly that they'd probably invite their own predators in for tea. That's when the disco squirrels showed up. Jake heard them before he saw them. A rhythmic thumping that sounded like a nightclub had collided with a nature documentary. Through the trees came a parade of squirrels, each about the size of a house cat, covered in naturally occurring mirror ball fur that reflected light in dazzling patterns. They moved in perfect synchronization, dancing their way toward the group. Oh how wonderful! Commander Purrington clapped his paws together. The disco squirrels have come to welcome our new teacher. Everyone back away slowly, Jake said, recognizing predatory behavior when he saw it, even when it came with a soundtrack. But they're dancing, Whiskers McGillicuddy said, already moving toward the approaching squirrels. They want to be friends. Look, they're doing the electric slide. The lead squirrel, a magnificent specimen with silver fur and LED-bright eyes, executed a perfect pirouette before baring teeth that were definitely not designed for nuts and berries. Those are not friendship teeth, Jake shouted, grabbing the nearest Fluffington and pulling him back. Those are murder teeth with a disco theme. The squirrels advanced, their synchronized dancing becoming more menacing. Jake realized he was about to get his first practical lesson in Fluffington survival training, whether he wanted it or not. Okay everyone, Jake said, trying to project calm authority while internally panicking. Time for your first real survival test. Remember what I said about assuming everything wants to kill you. But they're such good dancers, Dr. Mittens protested, even as he backed away. They can dance and want to eat you at the same time. It's called multitasking. Jake looked around at the 30 confused, trusting faces staring at him, then at the advancing army of carnivorous disco squirrels, and realized that his teaching methods were about to get very, very practical. Okay, new lesson, Jake shouted over the increasingly aggressive disco beats. Strategic retreat. It's not running away, it's advancing in the opposite direction. The Fluffingtons looked confused. But shouldn't we introduce ourselves first? Whiskers McGillicuddy called out, waving at the nearest squirrel. Hello beautiful dancing creature. I'm Whiskers, and this is my friend Jake who's teaching us about survival. The squirrel responded by doing a backflip, and snapping its jaws where Whiskers' paw had been a moment before. That's not a friendly greeting. Jake grabbed Whiskers and pulled him back. That's a I'm calculating how much seasoning you'll need gesture. Dr. Mittens was frantically scribbling notes. Should I be worried that the dancing squirrels aren't actually friendly? Yes. Be worried. Be very worried. In fact, upgrade your worry to panic. Oh good, I've been practicing panic. Let me try it. Dr. Mittens took a deep breath, and let out what could only be described as the most polite scream in galactic history. Oh dear me. This is quite concerning. I do hope everyone remains safe, and has a lovely day, despite the circumstances. Jake stared at him. That's your panic. I don't want to be rude about it. The disco squirrels had formed a perfect circle around them, their synchronized movements creating a dizzying light show. Jake realized they were being hunted by what amounted to a murderous flash mob. Commander Purrington, Jake yelled. Is there anything you didn't tell me about this planet? Well, Commander Purrington said, executing what he clearly thought was an evasive maneuver but looked more like a dance move. The disco squirrels are actually quite manageable. They usually only attack during mating season. When is mating season? Oh, all the time. They're very romantic creatures. Jake was about to respond when the squirrels suddenly stopped dancing and scattered into the trees, their mirror ball fur creating one final dazzling display before they vanished completely. Well, that was fun, Whiskers McGillicuddy said cheerfully. Do you think they'll come back for an encore? They didn't leave because they were done performing, Jake said, looking around suspiciously. They left because something bigger scared them away. That's when the sky darkened. Jake looked up to see a massive ship descending through the atmosphere. Its hull a matte black that seemed to absorb light. It was shaped like a giant arrowhead, and it radiated the kind of menace that made disco squirrels look like backup dancers at a children's birthday party. "Oh my," Commander Purrington said, his perpetual cheer finally showing some cracks. "That's rather unexpected." "What is that?" Jake demanded. "Well, you see, we may have forgotten to mention one tiny detail about why we needed survival training." Jake felt his blood pressure spike. "What detail?" "The snargloids." "The what now?" Dr. Mittens cleared his throat nervously. "The snargloids are a species of intergalactic, well, we don't like to use harsh language, but they're rather unpleasant individuals who have expressed interest in relocating to our planet." "By relocating you mean invading. We prefer to think of it as aggressive tourism." Jake watched more ships descend from the sky, each one bristling with weapons that looked like they'd been designed by someone who thought subtlety was for weaklings. "How long have you known about this?" "Oh, about 6 months, Commander Purrington said. "They sent us a very polite invasion notice. Very professional. They even included a timeline and everything." "A polite invasion notice?" "Yes, it was quite thoughtful really. They explained that they'd be conquering our planet on the 15th of next month, and they provided dietary requirements for the survivors they planned to keep as pets." Jake stared at him. "They told you exactly when they were going to invade, and you didn't think to mention this earlier." "Well, we didn't want to be rude. You came here to teach survival skills, not to hear about our little political difficulties." "Your little political difficulties are why you need survival skills." Dr. Mittens raised a paw. "Should I be worried that we're about to be conquered by beings who think of us as pets?" "Yes, be worried. Be terrified. Be whatever level of concern is appropriate for imminent subjugation." The lead ship settled into a hover about 50 feet above them. A hatch opened, and a platform descended carrying what Jake could only describe as the universe's most intimidating tourist group. The snargloids looked like someone had crossed a crocodile with a bodybuilder, and then given the result anger management issues. They were roughly humanoid, but covered in scales that shifted color from green to an aggressive red. Their leader, distinguished by additional spikes, and what appeared to be a crown made of smaller creatures' bones, stepped forward. "Greetings, fluffy ones." The leader called out in a voice that sounded like gravel being processed through a blender. "I am Warlord Nashtok, Supreme Commander of the Snargloid Empire and part-time recreational planet crusher." "Oh hello," Commander Purrington called back with completely inappropriate cheerfulness. "Welcome to Whiskers 7. We weren't expecting you for another 2 weeks." "Yes. Well, we decided to arrive early. We heard you had acquired a human and we wanted to see this legendary survival expert for ourselves." Jake felt 30 pairs of eyes turn to look at him. "Legendary." Warlord Nashtok's attention focused on Jake with the intensity of a laser beam. "Ah, the human. Your species has quite the reputation throughout the galaxy. Paranoid, aggressive and utterly ruthless when threatened. We respect that in a potential adversary." "I'm just a wilderness survival instructor," Jake said weakly. "Modest. We like that too. Tell us, human, what survival wisdom are you imparting to these delightfully naive creatures?" Jake looked around at the Fluffingtons, who were still smiling and waving at the heavily armed invaders. "I'm trying to teach them that the universe is dangerous and they should be suspicious of everyone." "Excellent." Warlord Nashtok clapped his claws together. "And how is that progressing?" "They offered to make you welcome cookies." "We know. We intercepted the recipe. It looks delicious." Commander Purrington stepped forward. "We were wondering if you might consider postponing your invasion for a few more weeks. Our human teacher is making such good progress, and we'd hate to interrupt his lessons." "Actually," Warlord Nashtok said, his scales shifting to a darker shade of red, "we've decided to accelerate our timeline. The presence of a human survival expert makes you significantly more dangerous than we initially calculated." "But we're not dangerous at all," Whiskers McGillicuddy protested. "We're still terrible at survival. Just yesterday I tried to pet a cactus because it looked lonely." "Yes, but you have a human teaching you. Do you know what humans are capable of when they're properly motivated?" Jake had a sinking feeling he was about to find out. "Humans," Warlord Nashtok continued, "are the only species in the galaxy that considers paranoia a survival trait instead of a mental disorder. They're so naturally suspicious that they invented the concept of trust but verify, and then decided that was too trusting. That's not entirely accurate, Jake started to say. They weaponized their own anxiety. They turned worry into a tactical advantage. They're so paranoid they prepare for disasters that haven't been invented yet. Dr. Mittens perked up. Really? That sounds like my kind of people. Which is why, Warlord Nashtok announced, we're moving up our invasion to tomorrow. We can't risk allowing a human to fully train an entire species of potential allies. Tomorrow? Commander Purrington's ears drooped. But that's terribly short notice. We haven't even learned how to properly panic yet. You'll have plenty of opportunities to practice, Warlord Nashtok said with what Jake was pretty sure was meant to be a reassuring smile but looked more like a crocodile contemplating lunch. We'll be back at dawn to begin the conquest. Try not to learn too much survival training before then. The Snargloids retreated back to their ship, leaving Jake standing in the middle of 30 confused, trusting faces, with less than 24 hours to turn the galaxy's most optimistic species into something resembling a defensive force. Well, Commander Purrington said brightly, this is exciting. We're going to have visitors. Jake looked up at the sky, where more Snargloid ships were taking position, and realized he was about to attempt something that would either be remembered as the greatest upset in galactic history, or the most polite extinction event ever recorded. Okay everyone, Jake said, rolling up his sleeves. Time for advanced survival training. We're going to learn everything humans know about being paranoid, sneaky, and strategically dishonest. That sounds wonderful, Dr. Mittens said, frantically taking notes. Should I be worried that we're about to learn how to be untrustworthy? No, Jake said grimly. You should be worried that we might not learn fast enough. Jake had exactly 18 hours to turn 30 cosmic optimists into something resembling a guerrilla fighting force. He started by gathering everyone in the center of their village, which looked like it had been designed by someone who thought warfare was a particularly energetic form of group therapy. All right everyone, forget everything you know about being nice, Jake announced. The Fluffingtons exchanged horrified glances. But being nice is who we are. Whiskers McGillicuddy protested. It's literally in our species description. Fluffington's aggressively friendly since the dawn of time. And that's exactly what the Snargloids are counting on, Jake said. They expect you to be polite, trusting and completely predictable. So we're going to teach you the most powerful human survival skill, being absolutely creatively, ruthlessly dishonest. Dr. Mittens raised his paw. Should I be worried that we're about to learn how to lie? You should be worried that you might actually be good at it, Jake replied. Humans didn't claw their way to the top of the food chain by being honest. We got there by being sneaky, paranoid, and really good at pretending to be something we're not. Commander Purrington looked troubled. But dishonesty is so impolite. So is being eaten by intergalactic bullies, Jake shot back. Now, lesson 1 in advanced human paranoia. Assume everyone is lying to you, including me right now. Are you lying to us right now? Asked a small yellow Fluffington. Maybe, that's the point. You should never be completely sure, Jake grinned. Welcome to the wonderful world of strategic mistrust. Over the next 6 hours Jake implemented what he mentally dubbed Crash Course in Human Deviousness. He started with basic camouflage techniques. The key to hiding, Jake explained, is to become something your enemy doesn't want to look at. Dr. Mittens, you're bright pink. In a forest you stick out like a disco ball at a funeral. Should I be worried that I'm too colorful? You should be worried that you're basically a walking target. But that's okay, because we're going to fix that. Jake showed him how to roll in mud, cover himself with leaves, and most importantly how to move without bouncing. But bouncing is how we express joy, Dr. Mittens protested, attempting what could generously be called a stealth crawl but looked more like a very slow, very polite dance. Joy will get you killed. Try expressing existential dread instead. It's much quieter, Dr. Mittens concentrated hard, and his natural bounce transformed into a surprisingly effective low crawl. Oh my, this is quite liberating. I feel so sneaky. Good, now you're getting it. Whiskers, you're next. Whiskers McGillicuddy approached with his usual enthusiasm. I can't wait to learn how to hide. It's like the galaxy's best game of hide and seek. It's exactly like hide and seek. Except if you're found, you become someone's lunch, Jake said. Now you're orange and green striped. In nature that usually means I'm poisonous. Stay away. We can work with that. Jake taught Whiskers how to move erratically, like something that might explode if handled improperly. Within an hour, Whiskers had mastered the art of looking simultaneously adorable and vaguely threatening. "This is wonderful," Whiskers exclaimed, then immediately caught himself and lowered his voice to a menacing whisper. "I mean, this is adequately satisfactory and definitely not wonderful at all." "Perfect. You're learning to lie already." Next, Jake tackled the concept of tactical deception. "Humans are naturally good at pretending to be weaker than we are," he explained. "We call it looking harmless while plotting revenge. But we are harmless," Commander Purrington pointed out. "Not anymore. By the time I'm done with you, you'll be the most politely dangerous species in the galaxy." Jake demonstrated by showing them how to fake injuries, appear confused when they weren't, and most importantly, how to make their enemies underestimate them. "The Snargloids think you're all naive and helpless," Jake continued. "Let them keep thinking that right up until the moment you prove them wrong." Dr. Mittens was frantically taking notes. "So we should act exactly like ourselves." "Exactly. But while secretly planning 17 different ways to make them regret invading your planet." The breakthrough came when Jake introduced them to the concept of constructive paranoia. He had them practice looking over their shoulders, jumping at shadows, and most importantly, always having an escape route planned. "Humans are so paranoid," Jake explained, "that we have backup plans for our backup plans. We prepare for disasters that haven't been invented yet." "That sounds exhausting," said a purple Fluffington. "It is, but it's also why we're still alive. Now, I want everyone to look around and identify 3 different ways to escape from wherever you're standing." The Fluffingtons looked around their peaceful village with new eyes. Suddenly, flower beds became cover, decorative fountains became obstacles, and the charming cobblestone paths became tactical terrain. "Oh my goodness," whispered a blue Fluffington. "Everything looks so different when you're expecting it to try to kill you." "Welcome to the human experience," Jake said. "We've been living like this for thousands of years, and it's made us very good at not dying." As the hours passed, Jake watched the Fluffingtons transform. They were still polite, still kind, but now there was something else underneath. They moved differently, looked around more carefully, and most importantly, started asking questions like, "What if this is a trap? And should we trust this completely?" Commander Purrington was practicing tactical communication. "Attention, fellow Fluffingtons," he announced in what he clearly thought was a menacing whisper. "We shall now engage in aggressive friendship with extreme prejudice." "What does that mean?" Jake asked. "I have no idea, but it sounds appropriately intimidating, while still being polite." Jake realized they were ready for the advanced course. "All right, everyone. Time for the final lesson: how to fight dirty while maintaining perfect manners." The Fluffingtons perked up. This was clearly more their speed. "The key," Jake explained, "is to be so polite that your enemy doesn't realize you're destroying them until it's too late." He taught them phrases like, "I'm terribly sorry, but I'm going to have to insist you leave our planet immediately. With all due respect, your invasion is quite inconvenient for us." Whiskers McGillicuddy raised his paw. "What if they don't leave when we ask politely?" "Then you escalate to firm politeness," Jake said. "You say, 'I'm afraid I must insist,' and then you implement the 17 different ways you've prepared to make them regret not listening to you the first time." Dr. Mittens looked up from his notes. "Should I be worried that we're becoming a terrifying fighting force?" "You should be worried that you might actually enjoy it," Jake replied. Just before dawn, as the first Snargloid ships began descending, Jake looked around at his students. They were still fluffy, still adorable, still aggressively friendly. But now they moved like predators disguised as prey, and their eyes held a glint that suggested they had internalized the most important human survival trait: the ability to be absolutely ruthless while appearing completely harmless. "Remember," Jake said as the invasion ships took position, "be polite, be friendly, and be prepared to make them regret every decision that led them to this moment." Commander Purrington stepped forward, his military uniform somehow looking more official than it had the day before. "Attention, Snargloid forces," he announced in a voice that managed to be both welcoming and ominous. "We would like to formally invite you to reconsider your invasion plans. We've prepared a lovely farewell party for you." Warlord Nashtuk's voice boomed down from the lead ship. "Fluffy ones, we have returned to begin your conquest. Prepare to be subjugated with extreme efficiency." "How wonderfully ambitious of you," Commander Purrington replied. "We're afraid we'll have to decline your generous offer of subjugation, but we'd be delighted to provide you with a memorable alternative experience." "What kind of alternative experience?" Warlord Nashtuk asked, sounding suspicious. "Oh, you know," Commander Purrington said with a smile that somehow managed to be both friendly and terrifying. The kind that you'll remember for the rest of your very brief lives. Jake watched the Snargloids hesitate, clearly confused by the shift in tone. The Fluffingtons still looked exactly like harmless fluffy creatures, but there was something different about them now. They stood differently, moved differently, and most importantly, they smiled differently. Jake, Dr. Mittens whispered. Should I be worried that I'm actually looking forward to this? No, Jake whispered back, feeling a surge of pride at what his students had accomplished. You should be worried that you're about to discover just how dangerous polite creatures can be when they decide to stop being polite. The first Snargloid dropships began their descent, and Jake realized he was about to witness either the most spectacular upset in galactic history, or the most polite military disaster ever recorded. Either way, it was going to be interesting. The first wave of Snargloid dropships landed with all the subtlety of a freight train colliding with a marching band. Warlord Nashantok emerged from the lead ship, followed by about 50 heavily armed warriors who looked like they'd been designed by someone who thought intimidating meant needs more spikes. Fluffy ones, Warlord Nashantok announced, his voice booming across the village square. We have come to claim your planet in the name of the Snargloid Empire. Prepare to be conquered with maximum efficiency and minimal paperwork. Commander Purrington stepped forward, his military uniform somehow looking more official than it had any right to. Welcome to Whiskers 7, Warlord Nashantok. We're absolutely delighted to see you again. We've prepared such a lovely reception for your visit. Reception? Warlord Nashantok looked confused. We're not here for a reception, we're here for a conquest. Oh, but we insist. Commander Purrington said with a smile that could have powered a small star. We've learned so much about hospitality from our human friend. We simply must show you what we've prepared. Dr. Mittens bounced forward, carrying what appeared to be a welcome basket. We brought you some of our traditional friendship cookies. They're made with our special recipe that includes love, kindness, and just a tiny bit of our new favorite ingredient, strategic thinking. Strategic thinking? Warlord Nashantok asked suspiciously. Oh yes, Dr. Mittens beamed. We've been learning all about it. For instance, we strategically placed these cookies in locations where they'd be most effective at expressing our friendship. Jake watched from behind a decorative fountain that he now realized provided excellent cover. The Fluffingtons had spent the night not just learning human paranoia, but implementing it with their own unique twist. What looked like a welcome celebration was actually an elaborate trap. We also prepared entertainment, Whiskers McGillicuddy announced, gesturing to the other Fluffingtons who had arranged themselves around the village square. We learned some new dances from our human teacher. They're called tactical maneuvers, and they're absolutely fascinating. Tactical maneuvers. Warlord Nashantok was clearly beginning to suspect something, but the Fluffingtons still looked so harmless that he couldn't quite figure out what. Oh yes, Whiskers demonstrated what appeared to be a cheerful little skip, but was actually a textbook flanking movement. See how we spread out in a seemingly random but actually carefully coordinated pattern. It's like a friendship circle, but more strategic. The Snargloids found themselves surrounded by bouncing, smiling creatures, who somehow managed to look both adorable and ominous at the same time. It was like being menaced by a squadron of weaponized teddy bears. This is ridiculous, Warlord Nashantok declared. You're still just fluffy creatures who want to be friends with everyone. We're going to conquer you now. Oh, we'd prefer if you didn't, Commander Purrington said politely. We've become quite attached to not being conquered. It's grown on us, rather like a favorite hobby. You don't get a choice in the matter. Warlord Nashantok raised his weapon. Snargloids, begin the conquest. That's when the Fluffingtons implemented their master plan. Oh dear, Dr. Mittens said sadly. I was so hoping you'd reconsider. I'm afraid we'll have to insist you leave now. Insist? Warlord Nashantok laughed. What are you going to do? Hug us to death? Actually, Commander Purrington said, his smile becoming somehow more terrifying. We were thinking of something a bit more educational. The Fluffingtons suddenly moved with a precision that would have made a military drill sergeant weep with joy. What had looked like random bouncing around the village square was revealed to be a carefully orchestrated tactical deployment. Every Snargloid found themselves isolated, surrounded, and facing creatures who were still smiling, but no longer looked quite so harmless. You see, Commander Purrington explained conversationally, our human teacher taught us that the key to survival is preparation. So we prepared. Prepared what? Warlord Nashantok demanded, looking around at his troops who were now outnumbered 3-1. Oh, everything, Whiskers McGillicuddy said cheerfully. We prepared 17 different ways to make you regret invading our planet. We prepared backup plans for our backup plans. We prepared for contingencies we haven't even thought of yet. It's been wonderfully educational. Dr. Mittens pulled out his notepad. We also prepared a detailed psychological profile of your species based on your behavior patterns. Did you know that snargloids are actually quite insecure? It's fascinating. All that aggression is just compensation for deep-seated abandonment issues. We are not insecure, Warlord Nashentok roared. Oh, but you are, Dr. Mittens said gently. It's nothing to be ashamed of. We've prepared a lovely therapy session for you. Very comprehensive, very thorough. Jake watched in amazement as the Fluffingtons implemented what could only be described as psychological warfare disguised as a group therapy session. They began analyzing the snargloids' behavior patterns, offering helpful suggestions for managing their aggressive tendencies, and somehow making the entire invasion force feel like they were being counseled by the galaxy's most aggressively helpful therapists. This is not how conquests are supposed to go, Warlord Nashentok protested. Oh, but we're not being conquered, Commander Purrington pointed out. We're providing you with a learning experience. Our human teacher showed us that education is the best weapon against ignorance. And you're all so very ignorant, added a small blue Fluffington sweetly. But don't worry, we can fix that. The snargloids found themselves subjected to what Jake realized was the most polite defeat in galactic history. The Fluffingtons had taken every lesson about human survival tactics and filtered it through their own uniquely friendly perspective. They weren't just repelling an invasion, they were conducting an intervention. We've also prepared a lovely going-away party for you, Dr. Mittens announced. With cake and everything. The cake is shaped like your ships, and it's designed to help you remember this educational experience for the rest of your lives. What kind of cake? Warlord Nashentok asked suspiciously. Oh, it's our special recipe, made with friendship, understanding, and a healthy dose of never come back here again, or we'll be forced to become less polite about it. Jake watched as the snargloids, despite being heavily armed and theoretically superior in every way, found themselves completely outmaneuvered by creatures who had somehow turned politeness into a tactical advantage. The Fluffingtons had learned to be paranoid, strategic, and ruthlessly effective while never once abandoning their core nature. This is impossible, Warlord Nashentok muttered. You're supposed to be harmless. Oh, we are harmless, Commander Purrington assured him. We're just also very well educated now. Our human teacher showed us that the two aren't mutually exclusive. Within an hour, the snargloid invasion force found themselves politely but firmly escorted back to their ships, carrying goodie bags full of educational materials about conflict resolution, and a strongly worded suggestion that they might want to consider a career change. This isn't over, Warlord Nashentok called out as his ship lifted off. Oh, but it is, Dr. Mittens called back cheerfully. We've prepared a lovely restraining order. It's galaxy-wide and includes a very comprehensive list of reasons why you should probably find a new hobby. As the snargloid fleet disappeared into the distance, Jake found himself surrounded by 30 beaming Fluffingtons, who had somehow managed to repel an invasion without firing a single shot or losing their fundamental niceness. So, Commander Purrington said, turning to Jake, how did we do on our final exam? Jake looked around at the village, which was completely undamaged, then at the Fluffingtons, who were already planning a celebration party for their successful defense, and finally at the sky where the snargloid fleet was rapidly becoming a distant memory. I have to admit, Jake said slowly, that was the most effective application of paranoid thinking I've ever seen. Should I be worried that we're too good at this? Dr. Mittens asked. You should be worried that other species are going to start asking for lessons, Jake replied. Commander Purrington's ears perked up. Speaking of lessons, Jake, we have a proposition for you. Oh no, we'd like to offer you a permanent position as our chief survival guru and professional pessimist. The pay is excellent, the benefits include unlimited friendship cookies, and we promise to provide you with plenty of opportunities to practice your paranoia. Jake looked around at the Fluffingtons, who were all watching him with hopeful expressions. He thought about his old job teaching survival skills to corporate executives, who would probably never use them. Then about his new job teaching survival skills to aliens who had just proved they could use them to revolutionize the concept of polite warfare. What would my official title be? He asked. Director of Strategic Pessimism and Applied Paranoia. Commander Purrington announced proudly. With a corner office and a view of the memorial garden we're planning to build for all the invasions we're going to politely repel in the future. Jake grinned. You know what? I think I'd like that. Dr. Mittens clapped his paws together. Wonderful. Should I be worried that we're going to make you too comfortable to ever want to leave? You should be worried, Jake's settling into his new role, that I'm going to teach you even more creative ways to be aggressively friendly. Oh good, Dr. Mittens said, making a note. I've been practicing advanced worrying, and I think I'm ready for the next level. Jake looked around at his new home, his new job, and his new students, and realized that sometimes the best survival strategy was simply finding the right place to belong. Even if that place happened to be a planet full of cosmic optimists, who had somehow learned to weaponize politeness. He settled into his new office, complete with a sign that read Survival Training, now with 73% less politeness, and began planning his next lesson, Advanced Paranoia for Beginners. How to properly suspect everyone while still serving them tea. Outside his window, the Fluffingtons were already lining up for their next class, bouncing with enthusiasm about learning new ways to be strategically suspicious while maintaining perfect manners. Jake smiled, and opened his lesson plan. It was going to be a very interesting career.